the war to end. All wars left scars worldwide, but in America it paved the way for unprecedented prosperity. As the dust of World War I settled, Europe was left in ruins, while the United States emerged relatively unscathed. This stark contrast set the stage for the Roaring Twenties, a decade defined by economic growth and social change. As the battlefields fell silent, the stage was set for a decade like no other, a time of dreams, delusions, and a dance with destiny. The Twenties roared with a booming economy and a stock market bubble, fueling a wave of consumerism. The heartbeat of this era was the relentless progress of industry, surging forward like a runaway train. The stock market was a roller coaster, and everyone was along for the ride, their pockets filled with dreams of fortune. The rise of consumer culture was like nothing ever seen before, as people indulged in the sweet taste of prosperity. Money flowed like champagne, but bubbles have a way of bursting. Radio and cinema connected millions, and the Harlem Renaissance reshaped art, music, and literature. This era marked the birth of mass culture. Radios bridged vast distances, knitting together the fabric of society. The silver screen captivated hearts and minds, influencing fashion, speech, and societal norms. The Harlem Renaissance, a cultural revival of African American music, literature, and arts, was a beacon of creativity, challenging racial barriers and reshaping America's cultural landscape. The seeds of today's mass culture were sown in the Roaring Twenties. Prohibition aimed to sober America, but it only fueled an era of jazz, bootleggers, and clandestine revelries. The 18th Amendment and the Volstead Act sought to eradicate alcohol, but in reality, they birthed a culture of underground bars known as speakeasies. It was a time of paradox, where the forbidden allure of these hidden spots, pulsing with jazz music and the clink of illicit liquor, became the heartbeat of the Roaring Twenties. The law said no, but the people said yes, and so the party raged on. Flappers challenged norms, and the 19th Amendment marked a pivotal victory for women's rights. With the passing of this amendment, women across America were given the right to vote, sparking a cultural shift that would echo throughout the century. Women began to reject traditional norms, embracing new styles and attitudes that shook the societal norms of the time. The Roaring Twenties wasn't just a period of economic and cultural boom, it was a time of female empowerment and liberation. The Twenties roared for women too, as they stepped into the limelight and onto the world stage. The Twenties were a time of technological wonders: cars, telephones, and flights, changing everyday life. The automobile, once a luxury, became a necessity, altering the landscape with highways and suburbs. Telephones connected people like never before, shrinking the world and quickening the pace of life. And then, there were flights. Aviation took a giant leap forward, turning what once was a daring dream into a reality. Indeed, with every revolution of the wheel, ring of the telephone, and roar of the engine, the world was shrinking, and the pace of life was quickening. But beneath the glitter, the era was marred by racial strife, political paranoia, and a growing divide between rich and poor. The Twenties may have roared, but for some, it was a roar of discontent. Racial tensions simmered, flaring into violence in the infamous Red Summer of 1919. The Red Scare saw a fear of communism grip the nation. And despite the economic boom, the wealth was not evenly distributed, creating a chasm between the haves and have-nots. The Roaring Twenties were not without their shadows, and these shadows grew long as the decade wore on. The decade ended as dramatically as it began, with the stock market crash plunging America into the Great Depression. The prosperity of the Roaring Twenties, it seemed, was built on a shaky foundation. On Black Tuesday, October 29th, the stock market collapsed, wiping out fortunes and casting a long shadow over the nation. The bubble had burst, the roar had quieted, and the economic boom turned to bust. The party was over, and the hangover was severe. A decade of innovation, liberation, and contradiction, leaving a legacy that still echoes today. The Roaring Twenties, a vibrant era that danced to the beat of jazz, broke boundaries, and birthed groundbreaking technologies. A time that saw women stepping into a new light, while shadows of social and economic disparity grew. We still feel the ripples of this dynamic decade in our culture, our economy, and our societal norms. The Roaring Twenties, a time of dreams or delusions.